Hello, I'm Susan Flory. This is The Big Middle. My first encounter with my guest, Eranda Wickramasinghe, was on Real Food Twitter, which is a fascinating place, always. Eranda put up a tweet that demanded attention. Shirt off, belly out. It was a series of month-by-month side shots of him from the summer of 2019. And you could have called it The Incredible Shrinking Man. It was headlined, Obesity and Type 2 Diabetes Can Be Prevented and Reversed. This time we're going to hear Eranda's health recovery story and how he became an influential purveyor of healthy lifestyle education advice and of hope and change. Hi, Eranda.
Hi, Susan. It's a real honor. Thank you.
It's lovely to finally get you on board here. I've been following you for such a long while, and I mean, that was a showstopper of a tweet.
Yeah, and it was kind of the point, because once you know that type 2 diabetes can be prevented, and once you know you can recover from obesity and pre-diabetes, you kind of want to shout it out from the rooftops. So that was kind of the point, to grab attention and to give hope to people, really, in the same way that people gave me hope.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is, if anyone wants to reference it now, head to Twitter. It's pinned to the top of your feed at ErandaW1. And what I loved about it too is there was a link to it, 44 pages in forensic detail. You told your story, and there were charts and graphs and more charts, and because this is the first chapter of a book.
Maybe eventually I will write a book, but I wanted to give an idea to people what a real person, like a real everyday person, went through week by week to recover from pre-diabetes and obesity.
You don't do things by half. It's not your personality, is it? You go all in. Exactly.
I mean, in my life, I've run 13 marathons. I don't know how many half marathons, 10Ks. I did a pretty heavy-duty degree in engineering, electronic engineering. So, yeah, you're right. I don't do things by half.
Well, I got a little taste of that because after I put out a Twitter call for an upcoming guest, it was Megan Ramos, the partner of Dr. Jason Fung at the Fasting Method, of course, and I know that you know them well.
Yeah.
I said, oh, anybody have any questions for Megan? She's coming on the podcast. And I got, some half-liners and some one or two-liners. And you gave me a huge email full of context and 3 chunky questions. I really love that. I mean, you can't but love your thirst for knowledge.
And Megan Ramos absolutely played a huge part in my recovery, because Megan Ramos and Dr. Jason Fung especially were the people I kind of credit with my recovery, along with people like Dr. Jen Unwin and Dr. David Unwin.
Well, let's hear your story. I'd like to start with your childhood, because you told me before we opened the mics that you grew up in Sri Lanka and you used to eat sugar sandwiches. I mean, not every day, but...
Yeah, absolutely. So in Sri Lanka, it's a beautiful country. Yeah, I used to eat sugar sandwiches, white bread, sugar and margarine, lots of biscuits and lots of other treats like that. So I grew up in Sri Lanka, and I was always chubby as a child, not necessarily obese, but always a little bit overweight. And that kind of continued all the way through to adulthood. Though I discovered running as an adult, and that helped because I joined a running club, started running marathons. But weirdly, I was running maybe 35 to 40 miles a week, but not losing weight. And to lose weight, I had to do the sort of the traditional kind of yo-yo dieting, including things like meal replacement shakes and things like that. So I was on kind of things like Slim Fast, or those calorie counting or calorie restriction.
Well, would this have been what? You're in your 40s. This would have been in the 90s?
So I took up running. I think my first marathon was 2001. Yeah, 2001. And at that stage, I was running maybe 35, 40 miles a week. And the only way I could kind of maintain my weight was to occasionally go on a yo-yo diet, even doing that amount of exercise.
Yeah, so you were one of the rare men who had to really calorie restrict, because us women, I mean, since, I grew up as a teenager in the 70s, and that's all we did. All we cared about was looking good in our 501s, and it wasn't really for the boys. It was just hip bones had to be out, stomachs had to be as flat as can be, and we would go bananas and do all kinds of aerobics, 70s and 80s. So, I mean, it's the same thing. Everyone sort of encounters it through their life, and now it is so wonderful to see it change. But getting back to your story, when did you first discover that you were pre-diabetic?
So I was diagnosed on Friday, the 23rd of August, 2019. So
oh, wow, you remember the actual day.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's kind of a life-changing piece of news because both my parents are doctors, my sister's a doctor, type 2 diabetes runs in the family. So I knew a little bit about diabetes already, type 2 diabetes already. I knew that you could go blind. I knew that you could lose your feet through kind of amputation. I knew that you could potentially get kidney failure and have to have dialysis. So I took it very seriously. And sort of at the time, I didn't really know what to do. I didn't have the first clue of what to do, really.
Well, were you offered drugs, metformin?
So at that stage, they didn't offer any medications. They just said, you need to lose weight, as if that's an easy thing to do, because I knew I could lose weight by calorie restricting, but I didn't know how to keep the weight off because all through my life, as I said, I've been a yo-yo dieter. I've not really sort of, I have been able to lose weight through huge amounts of exercise and restricting calories, but I've never been able to keep the weight off. So it was quite depressing really at the time because I thought, okay, so I know how to lose weight, but how do I keep it off? I can't be doing this for the rest of my life. And then really fortunately for me, I discovered a few things really. I discovered Dr. David Unwin, who is a GP in the north of England, who's had a tremendous amount of success with helping type 2 diabetes patients and pre-diabetic patients. And I listened to what he had to say, and I listened to the words that his wife, Jen Unwin, had to say. And that really gave me some hope. And I didn't really know that much about low carb, but I thought, what have I got to lose? Then I also discovered Dr. Jason Fung and Megan Ramos and heard about this weird thing called intermittent fasting. So I thought, okay, so let's give this a go. I started the next day and sort of I learned on the go, really, without really a clue of what I was doing. And sort of within a month, I could see some tremendous results. If you see in my Twitter, you'll see that progression, and that really encouraged me just to see that I could get such instant, almost, well, not instant, but it took a month. It took to.
And were you doing low carb, high fat, medium protein? I mean, I've seen actually some photos on Twitter of some of the plates of food that you present, and you eat enormous quantities now, don't you? But not high in carbs.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's one meal a day. So in the context that I'm not eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner, it's actually not that much of food. If you think about, as in that's my lot for the whole day. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've been doing OMAD and 2MAD for a very long time, so I know what you mean. But I just, I'm sort of pescatarian with a little bit of chicken, and so it's just, for me to have a whole huge plate of animal protein, it becomes difficult for me. So a lot of eggs are happening now. A lot of eggs. So what did you do then? You committed to this lifestyle and you were thrilled and you were fasting as well. So so satiety was high and you no longer felt that food had control over you?
Exactly. So for the first time in my life, I feel full after meals and I don't get hungry for hours and hours and hours. And also, when I was eating a lot of processed foods and refined carbohydrates, I used to get hungry all the time and hangry quite often as well. Yeah. So hungry and angry. So that hangry feeling. I really struggled to get between breakfast and lunch without having a snack or multiple snacks. And the same, I really struggled to get from lunch to dinner time without having a snack as well. But these days, I have my one meal a day or 2 meals a day, and I'm good to go. if I'm really busy at work, I'll just say, I don't have time to eat today. I'll just eat tomorrow.
Yeah, it's
And
quite
that's not a
amazing,
problem.
isn't it? The satiety is off the charts when
Yeah.
you adopt this sort of a lifestyle. And
Yeah.
people are always saying to me, "How do you do it? Oh my goodness, I would just be ravenous and I'd be screaming at everyone." You think it's incredible. You're not thinking about food. Your
Yeah.
hunger is at bay. Hunger is something that you might be hungry in a few hours, you might not be, and you just don't eat when you're not hungry. It's quite
Absolutely.
amazing, really.
I think it's the difference between a bully and a good friend. Because when I was a food addict, a carbohydrate addict, hunger used to be a bully and used to call the shots. Whereas now, hunger is like a really, really good friend who kind of recognizes and respects you and says, look, I can see you're busy. I'll just come back when you're free and we can have a really good catch up. And, and that's actually how I live, because the hunger comes and, there's this daily cycle of ghrelin. So the hunger comes and taps you on the shoulder, says, are you busy right now? Oh, it's okay. You're busy. I'll come back. And the next day or later that day, I sit down to a really good meal and me and my hunger catch up and we have a chat and, it's beautiful.
I don't know if I've gone into fat burning because I haven't lost any fat, but I definitely have that where ghrelin doesn't come knocking very often, and that's what's quite amazing. So you're not living your entire life plotting your next meal. You have to shop and plan what you're going to do so that you're not going to be tempted to wolf down that bag of kettle chips that is in the shop just down the road because, as we know, in the UK, we have such an obesogenic environment. You can't move for seeing a bag of Doritos.
Yeah, absolutely. And the situation in the hospitals especially is bad because Dr. Asim Malhotra talks about this in terms of it's shocking that you can't get healthy food in a hospital.
No, I know. Whenever I've gone to the hospital and you look and you think, well, what would there be if I was hungry? There's only water and then there's fizzy drinks and all the sugar-laden products from the big food manufacturers, and there's never anything healthy. I mean, even the nuts will have like dried fruit and dates and things in them. Exactly. So you just think, oh, well, I'll just have to pick out, 5 almonds and maybe do those because my sugar will spike if I have dried apricots and dates that are included in this. So so we can talk a little bit about food policy and some of the moves in a bit. So when you were on the carb roller coaster, I mean, what were you having? Were you having traditional couple of slabs of white bread and then another sandwich, eating 3 meals, quite carb heavy and lots of rice at on the third meal?
Yeah. So cereal for breakfast with skim milk. Then sort of that would make me hungry by mid-morning. So I'll have like a coffee, maybe sort of a croissant or some sort of Danish pastry or something again, sugar. Then lunch would be pasta or rice, something like that, or potatoes would be the main thing with something else. Then on the way home, because I was too hungry to make it home, I'd have a flapjack or kind of a chocolate or something like that, or some Oreos, the king of processed foods, Oreos, and then home and then more carbs. Yeah.
Now, I met your good friend, Sam Feltham, the founder of the Public Health Collaboration UK, the charity. It was the last episode. You work as an ambassador for the PHC UK. Tell us about that work.
So the Public Health Collaboration is a not-for-profit organisation in the UK. So it's a charity. It's a UK charity. And it's dedicated to improving public health in the UK, especially with regards to nutrition and especially with regards to things like type 2 diabetes and obesity. So Sam is somebody with a vision, really, and an enormous amount of compassion as well. And it's amazing what he's done, founded this charity. And as he mentioned in the last episode, there's about 250 of us in terms of volunteers who are ambassadors. So quite a few of us run kind of these Zoom-based or in-person support groups to help people with obesity or type 2 diabetes to try and recover from those conditions.
You put enormous energy into these groups that you do, as well as your day job and your family life. 3 times a week, you're meeting with people and helping them optimize their health.
Absolutely. So the first group I started was about 10 months ago. We had week 45 Zoom session last night. And I'm really happy to say that I've been able to help 2 people achieve drug-free type 2 diabetes remission, and others achieve kind of substantial weight loss in terms of overcoming obesity as well. So it's
That's
enormously
fantastic.
yeah.
Is everyone in the group, or I suppose for the 2 that you helped, they're no longer type 2 diabetic, or at least it's reversed for now.
Exactly.
I suppose it would be, it's not a cure, it's just a reversal. But
Exactly.
is everyone diabetic or pre-diabetic in the groups?
No, it's a mixture actually. So 2 people are in remission, and all the others, they don't have pre-diabetes or diabetes, but they have obesity and weight issues. Yeah.
I mean, it's the obesity pandemic. It's the metabolic syndrome. It's a cluster, what, out there right now. It's COVID. We had such bad outcomes because we're all so unhealthy and we end up eating. I say we, and you and I don't, and loads of people don't, but in general, the UK population. Did you see that graph where it said 60% of the American diet is ultra-processed foods, 50% here in the UK? So we're not far behind. Everybody points a finger at the United States as being the worst. And France, the figure was 14%. I've lived in France, didn't surprise me at all. But I see here, we look at the shops, we look at the hospital vending machines, as you say, and you really can't move for touching up against you. Big bags of crisps, 2 for £1 or something, and the chocolate bars in all of the shops. And I mean, wherever you go, you've got carb-laden food presented as if it's the treat that you want, not the poison that it is.
Exactly. And it's so cheap and widespread. That's kind of intentional because with widespread monocrop agriculture, anything that's grain-based is really, really cheap to produce and very profitable. So, and it's within the law. Yeah. Right?
Absolutely.
So it's within the law to produce all these foods.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't. Let's go back to your groups first, because we can talk about. We had a national food strategy report come out, and I want to just park that aside because I want to get to your group. So, are all the people that you're helping in the groups? It's 22 people, you said?
So I've got 22 people, 6 people in my original group that I started 10 months ago. And then recently, Sam spoke about this last week, we've launched a new initiative called the Lifestyle Club.
I like the T-shirt. That's the new T-shirt.
Exactly, like the T-shirt, the Lifestyle Club. So the idea of the Lifestyle Club is to work directly with primary care physicians, so GPs, to help their type 2 diabetic and pre-diabetic patients recover from those conditions in terms of get into remission, reduce medications, even kind of eliminate medications. So that's 4 of us at the pilot stage. So that's myself, and give a shout out to Helen Gowers, John Furness, and Heather Temple Marsh. We are the TLC1 Avengers. So because we kind of give ourselves that tagline in our little WhatsApp group that we support each other. So between us, we're supporting almost 100 patients in little groups of people, all Zoom-based, and really coaching them to try and change lifestyle, to make meaningful, sustainable changes to their lifestyle that's going to eventually result in them reducing their medications, hopefully, and for some people at least, going into full remission.
Is it only low carb that you're proselytizing to them about? Is it only low carb, or do you offer them a mix of different dietary regimes that work for that individual? I mean, maybe someone doesn't seem to have an issue with eating carbs. I mean, the science would suggest otherwise, but just throwing it out to you, because we know we've got... veganism is having its moment. And if you read all kinds of people who are going to be making mock meat and all the rest of it, we do have to reference the fact that precision nutrition is here to stay, and it's the future.
Yeah. So it's only low carb for the Lifestyle Club. So the patients are effectively self-selecting. So the GPs refer the patients to the program. We have an initial kind of introductory session. We kind of go through the approach. And if they're interested in low carb and other lifestyle changes, then they apply to get onto the course. So everybody that's on the course has self-selected to try low carb.
Right. Okay. Just wondering.
Yeah.
And I love how on Twitter you call the calories in, calories out model. I love how you have some fun with that. Is this your own moniker, psychopathy?
Yes, psychopathy. CICOPATHY.
Very
Psychopathy.
clever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that doesn't work. I mean, clearly we fat shame and calories in, calories out. It does not work for most people. You know, Gary Taubes says if you look at food and you become fat. Gary Taubes, the celebrated author of all kinds of books, the investigative journalist, whose recent one is The Case for Keto, I believe.
Case for Keto, fantastic book.
Is it? I need to get it. I haven't read it yet. But, you know, we need to cater for everyone and find the best path individually to better health. This obesity pandemic and metabolic syndrome is crushing us, and it's causing so many billions of dollars, pounds to be spent. People get sick and then they get sicker, and there are no pills to get them out of a bad diet that is causing all of these issues.
Absolutely. I think where all of the different dietary approaches converge is getting rid of ultra-processed foods.
Indeed.
I think whatever approach you take, because some people, as you mentioned, they want to go vegan or plant-based. Some people want to do kind of really low fat, and high carb by definition. And then some people want to kind of go for the low carb approach. There's even approaches like carnivore. There's low carb itself it's a very broad spectrum. There's kind of low carb, which is kind of under 130 grams of carbs a day. And then there's keto, which can be below 20 grams a day. So it's a very broad church in terms of all these people. What they agree on is unprocessed foods and minimally processed foods that people have been eating for centuries. So that's where the common ground is. Yes. And people can argue about what's the best approach. But I think what a lot of people now agree on is avoiding those ultra-processed foods.
Yeah, get the junk out. I mean, that's the one thing I did notice. I referenced Twitter again. You are quite feisty. Lately. Yes. On Twitter, you've been getting into some real spats with people who are just in denial that there is an obesity epidemic or pandemic, let's call it.
Pandemic, absolutely. And, because I think it's something like, I think I was looking at a Cancer Research UK report earlier, and from 2018-19, they were reporting more than 6 out of every 10 people, so over 60% of the UK adult population is either overweight or obese. And that was kind of, in 2018, 2019. So it's worse than that now. Well, so it is pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the statistics, they can blind you. It's just incredible. And, we know that diabetes doesn't happen quickly. It builds and it builds and it builds. And so many of us are walking around and wouldn't have a clue if we were pre-diabetic and on the verge. And I mean, the values, we get into all of the way medical values, blood values are, the ranges. That's for a healthy population, not an unhealthy population. So it's a real puzzle. And I think I just applaud you for the work you're doing. And of course, Sam at the Public Health Collaboration. Now, I know that you're a family man first, but I always have this vision of you staying up really late, reading journals and listening to, reading medical abstracts, constantly learning, maybe listening to TED Med talks about all of this. Is that you? Is that you constantly reading and listening and learning?
That used to be me, because back in August 2019, when I was in panic mode, I didn't really know what I was doing. So at that stage, I was just devouring anything I could get hold of, staying up late, reading things. And not so much anymore. I try and have a good sleep routine now. So generally speaking, kind of we're in bed by about 10:30, because our son gets us up quite early, usually about 6 o'clock. Yeah. Sometimes earlier than that. So now that I realize the impact of poor sleep on my health, so I really prioritize sleep now.
Yeah. I mean, it's a huge stressor, isn't it? For me, it's probably the number one. Yes, we've got emotional distress and all of the rest, but your cells will defend If you're short-slept, I mean, you've already lost the game for the next day and a couple of days. I mean, you really have to prioritize. And I'm terrible. I'll think, oh, I haven't watched anything in a long while. And I am that person that will keep watching the series. If I find something interesting, I'll just go, just one more. And I even sometimes on Netflix, I do the 1.25 speed.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Because it's just like the treat, and then I realize, oh my Lord, it's 1:30, and I'm still up, and that's not good because the alarm is going off at 8, and I need to bound out of bed, and that's not enough sleep, is it?
No, not at all. Yeah, and like you said, it kind of wipes out the rest of the day a little bit, and you almost feel. I think my wife said this perfectly the other day because we had a bit of a disrupted night. I won't go into detail, but she said, I feel like I've got a hangover, but I haven't had any of the fun.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Absolutely. Well, I do know because I follow you that your little boy, he swallowed a coin and you had to rush him to emergency.
Exactly. We went to kind of accident emergency, got an X-ray, got a full cleaner bill of health. They said, don't worry, take him home, get him to bed, and it'll all be fine. It'll just come through. So,
which kind of coin was it? Big, little?
I think it was a pound coin.
Oh, wow. That's quite thick. No, and I mean, if it's a 50-cent piece, I don't think they're in circulation anymore, are they? But no, that's quite a hefty coin. It's not like one thin dime. So you would worry as a parent, it could get stuck and block and oh my goodness. So all good now.
Yeah, all good now. So the doctors have given him a clean bill of health, not to worry. And he's really happy and healthy, since then. So all good.
Fantastic. And speaking of kids, how do you feel as a parent? He's going to be 3 soon, I think you said. Soon he's going to be going off to school. We know the recipe in every school is 10 o'clock, feed the kids a bit of sugar, a couple of biscuits, because we certainly can't have the little darlings not eating for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, how are you going to push back against that?
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. So with nursery, what we do is we give him breakfast at home with real food so that he doesn't eat cereal in the morning. He eats at what everybody else eats while he's at nurseries. We can't really kind of dictate what they do. But what we're doing at the moment is the best that we can at home, really. So every meal that he has at home is kind of freshly cooked, home-cooked food. Yeah. Real food, unprocessed foods, no processed carbohydrates or anything like that. And I think we'll just have to do the same when it comes to school, really. And all we can do is educate him, and hopefully some of it sort of rubs off, and actually live it so that he can see what we eat. Yeah. Give him that example.
Well, Jamie Oliver tried his best to get the education system to accept that constantly loading kids up on sugar is not the way forward. It's a big battle. It's just hard to get mindsets moved.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you make of the proposal this week that we saw here in the UK to tax sugar and salt as one element? It was the headline-grabbing element of the National Food Strategy to tackle obesity and the climate crisis. Have you had a chance to get across some of the content on that?
Not in any great depth. It's a difficult one because it's reductionist thinking, in my view. It's the level of processing of the food, I think, that's important, not necessarily the salt content or the sugar content. It's the level of processing. So if it's just based on those levels, there might be some unintended consequences to that.
What are you thinking? What are you thinking? Unintended consequences.
So if there's anything that we know is that businesses react, they adapt, and they're very, very good at adapting, right? Because when the original kind of food guidelines were published in the US and then pretty much adopted all over Europe and including the UK, the manufacturers reformulated, and they actually used it to their advantage because reformulating with cheap mass-produced ingredients is highly profitable.
And the zero fat, low fat, well, they just added in some sugar and disguised it with 17-pound names with multi-syllable, and it's all sugar. You look at the back of any packet of anything that's prepared and it's low fat, zero fat, and you just think, oh my word, what are those chemicals that they're putting in there?
Yeah, and talking about chemicals, that's a really good point, actually. Since the sugar tax, a lot of drinks manufacturers have reformulated using synthetic sweeteners.
Yes.
And certainly the research tends to indicate that that's not had a noticeable impact in terms of obesity in any meaningful way, because it feeds the sugar kind of cravings, that sweet taste.
Exactly. And doesn't it spike your blood sugar as well? I mean, some of these artificial sweeteners do the same thing as sugar. And so the roller coaster continues.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of them, even if they don't spike your blood sugar, they'll spike your insulin.
Yes. There's some social prescribing elements and cookery classes for kids, which is good in the Food Czar's report, the restaurateur Henry Dimbleby in his report, that I guess the government's going to respond in about 6 months' time. So we'll see what they do. But if I gave you that magic wand and you could make, radical changes tomorrow, never mind the vested interests, what would you do to, get us out of this hole? Because this food environment that we've created in the so-called developed world and exported around the world to its detriment, it's killing us.
It is killing us. So if there's anything I've learned through my own journey and the people I've helped, is people need hope. People need a realistic hope that things can get better for me personally. My life, I can be happier and healthier, and I can sustain a better way of living. They need that hope. So hitting people with a stick and scaring them doesn't work. You need to give them something positive to look to. I'm taking all of this inspiration especially from Jen Unwin, who I really look up to.
Clinical psychologist, and she's the wife of the low-carb GP, David Unwin. They're sort of the power couple in the UK of this thinking. Yeah, this way of living.
Exactly. So I think more than anything else, what people need is hope. And what gives people hope is showing people, ordinary people that they can relate to, who've recovered their health and are living happy, healthy lives. So this is what I did. It might not work for you, but you could try this. And, these are the things I did, but you could tweak it to your own taste, make it your own. And what have you got to lose?
Well, pretty inspirational that 2 of the members of your group, of 22 people across 3 groups, have now reversed their diabetes. That's pretty incredible. With food, with tweaking their lifestyle and eating real food.
Yes, just to so the 2 people who are going into remission, they've been working on it for the past 10 months. Now, the other 2 groups with the TLC, we've just been doing it for 3 weeks so far. So obviously it's too early, but hopefully in the months to come, we'll get more kind of really good results.
And the TLC is what's that badge on your T-shirt, the Lifestyle Club, which is a fantastic initiative. Well done to Sam and all you guys for really moving it along, because the NHS, they're going to grab onto that, aren't they, and just run with it. It's so necessary.
Yeah. And certainly the primary care physicians and nurses that we've been working with have been enormously supportive and enthusiastic.
Have you ever thought about giving up your job in finance and doing some sort of a medical qualification?
It's a really good question. I think I really like the fact that this is something I do sort of as a volunteer, as a charitable exercise. So I really enjoy it. I'm really enthusiastic about it. I'm just thinking, if it became my day job, would I still have that fire and enthusiasm if it just became like an everyday thing? Whereas now it's usually 3 times a week. It's a fairly sizable time commitment. But if I was doing every day, Monday to Friday, I'm wondering if it would lose some of that sort of, I'm not sure. Yeah.
And I know we talked before we opened the mics. There's a lot of psychology involved with what you do. You're listening to people and helping them manage their stress, the stress of work, the stress of maybe an argument they had with their partner, or, the stress of one of their kids is not well. And just, life is full of stress. So I was really pleased to hear that you're not just saying, well, eat 50 grams of carbs and do, it's not just food centered, it's holistic.
Exactly. It's all about the basics in terms of, what can you do in that moment when you're in distress? What can you do aside from, going headfirst into donuts? What can you do instead? So, can you phone a friend and have a talk with them? Can you go for a walk? Can you take your dog for a walk? Is there anywhere nearby where you can be in nature, in a park or something like that? So what can you do instead of something destructive in that moment? Do you have an app on your phone like Headspace or something like that,
Or
where
calm,
you can just do a
yeah.
2-minute breathing exercise or something like that? Yeah, just to break
And the
that
going
cycle.
for a walk, a couple of times a day, that is weight-bearing exercise. It
Yeah.
is so important. So if you don't want to do the lunges and the pull downs against your bathtub or, a bar, you can just go for a walk, and that's going to do you no end of good.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I use a lot with all of my groups is the thinking by James Clear, Atomic Habits.
Oh, I
So
love that book. I'm a big
yeah,
fan.
yeah, it's amazing because I say to people, okay, so rather than saying I'm going to do a 40-minute walk tomorrow, how sustainable is that going to be? Are you going to do that 2 days in a row, 3 days in a row, and then stop? So how about you pair that right back to something easy to do? So tell yourself, okay, for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to do a 5-minute walk every morning. Just 5 minutes. And even if you feel like walking for longer, don't walk for longer. Just restrict yourself to that 5 minutes. Establish the habit.
Yeah.
Making it almost automatic. That's just when I wake up, I have my breakfast, or if you don't necessarily have to have breakfast, but I have my breakfast. I go for my 5-minute walk and do that for 2 weeks. Or one of my group actually has developed a meditation habit, because I said to him, set yourself a timer, pick any meditation routine you want, do it for 2 minutes, and stop when you get to 2 minutes. Even if it's a 10-minute routine, stop when you get to 2 minutes. And months later, he's still doing it.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's those energy snacks and mind snacks. Instead of reaching for a food snack you don't even want, have a glass of water and do that until it becomes a habit. And then you can start lengthening the time.
Exactly.
Oh, that's
Start
brilliant.
small.
Yeah. Well, I like James Clear too. The thing that always sticks with me, because I can moan about things just like everyone, and I can say, "Oh, I've got to do this," and "Oh, I've got to do that." And I had an episode with Dr. Happy, Dr. Andy Cope. The Art of Brilliance is what he does, and I would love everyone to listen to that, because I think a lot about what he says. He invokes what he calls the 4-minute rule. So whenever you're thinking about moaning and complaining and, being the drain instead of the radiator, just think, be your best self for 4 minutes. And it's the same thing with the energy snacks. Start small, start manageable. Before you know it, those 4 minutes become 20 minutes and you're smiling all the time, not stupidly, but you're a happier person because you've decided to invest that time and that thought in being better and, quit complaining.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And another person I've taken an enormous amount of inspiration from is a person called Sydney Banks, who wrote a book called The Enlightened Gardener. And his whole idea is that our thoughts define our reality, in terms of everything starts with a thought. So before we become upset, before we sort of go into some sort of destructive cycle, there's a thought that sparks it. So, for example, one of the examples is like, so if you're in a good mood and you're going for a drive, somebody cuts up in front of you, you're in a good mood, you ignore it. It's all fine. If you're in a bad mood to start off with, the same thing happens and you go into a rage. So what's happened? So the action is the same. What's different is your mind and your thoughts.
Absolutely. This is actually the exact example that you gave is what Dr. Andy Cope talks about too. And I just forgot to say, because I did lead up to it, James Clear, I like the thing that he says, and because I'll say, oh, I've got to do this and I've got to do that, and, a little stress bunny. And then I realize I love what he says. Don't say, I've got to, say, I get to do this.
Yeah.
I get to do that. And it has really changed my outlook enormously since I do what Dr. Happy, Dr. Andy Cope says, and the Atomic Habits of James Clear. I mean, they are life-changing, and I'm really glad that's part of the package that you're offering. People can get enormous encouragement and inspiration from that after you end the Zoom calls.
Absolutely. And I love what you said, because semantics, the words that we use really matter. They really do. Because quite often in my groups, people can say things like, I can't give up bread, or I can't give up rice, or they say, I need rice, or I need bread. When they say things like that, what we do is, okay, let's talk about this. So let's kind of hold that up in front of the light and look at it. If you say, I can't levitate, that is true, because nobody can do that. Or if you say, I can't fly, that's absolutely true. But if you say, I can't give up bread, what you really mean is, I don't want to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you phrase it in a way that's factually true, it starts with that self-honesty. If it's the case that right now somebody doesn't want to give up bread or rice, then that's perfectly fine. They don't want to do it.
It's a choice.
Because I'm not in their home. What they do is completely up to them. So all I'm there for is to support them through making empowered choices and informed choices.
But the mind is such a powerful tool. It all begins in the mind. So it's really important to open your mindset. And once you have those little habits, the 4-minute rule, the mind snacks, the energy snacks, before you know it, you've changed your lifestyle. And I'm really, really impressed with what you do, Eranda. Huge thanks for coming on The Big Middle and sharing your story. You give so much hope to so many who are trying to get out of metabolic distress. So applause all round for what you're doing, and may you keep doing it for a really long time. Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks, Susan, for everything you're doing in this space as well, because you've had amazing people on your podcast who are in this space, and you've done a huge amount for public health because of that. So thank you.
Oh, you're so kind. That is Eranda Wickramasinghe. Thank you so much, and good luck with the Lifestyle Club, which is the latest initiative of the public health collaboration of the founder, Sam Feltham, and all of the many doctors and health practitioners that are on board with that. We're changing things little by little. Thanks again, Eranda.
Brilliant. Thanks, Susan. Bye now.
We'll have copious links as ever in the show notes. This episode of The Big Middle is researched and edited by me, Susan Flory. I've got no movie-style scroll of credits to share with you. It's just me doing the editing and wrangling the guests. If you want to support this podcast, you can head to my website, susanflory.com, and there's a little pink button up in the right there. If you can pitch in, that would be really good, because there are costs involved with getting these episodes out. So, yeah. Whatever you can do, I'd really appreciate it. And also, if you can subscribe and review it wherever you can, usually it's just Apple Podcasts, that would be great, because it really does help get it in the ears of others. Ciao for now. We'll see you next time.